Hello everyone, I had a few questions regarding the monitor I've been using in my videos or short clips, so I thought I could try a dedicated video about it. I mean, why not? This is the Sony KDL 15G2000. It is an LCD monitor from 2007. There are ports for AV, VGA, components and RGB. I know LCD monitors aren't particularly well liked within the retro gaming community, and yes, you probably are still better off hunting for a decent CRT if you can, but on the other hand, this thing is far more lightweight in comparison, it's very convenient to set up, and I've thrown a lot of my old game collection at this thing and I thought some of them look quite good. Bear in mind I am just recording off of my phone camera, I'm a very amateur channel, so things like the lighting of our room or how I position the camera do come into play. Some games will undoubtedly look better than others. Or maybe they don't look good at all according to your opinion, but I'm pretty happy with some of the results here. I am also using a lot of specialist cables I bought from Retrogaming Cables UK. They are a little bit more pricey, but I've usually had a decent experience with them. I won't really get too much into the more technical aspects here as I don't feel particularly good at that. So let's just try out a few games and you can see what you think. To begin with, I tried out the Nintendo Wii using some cheap off-brand component cables. And as you may have already seen in a couple of my other videos, Wario Land Shake It in particular looked pretty fantastic on this thing. Its hand-drawn animation and background art almost made it look like a Saturday morning cartoon. It really got me into revisiting my old Wii library again, and I was kind of impressed at how well some of these games held up visually. I guess a lot of these games do have some pretty unique visual styles, utilising the underpowered hardware of the Wii to their advantage. I think if you're after a decent TV for your Nintendo Wii, this monitor might actually be worth looking into. For example, No More Heroes is actually one of my favourite video games of all time, and it did feel like an intentionally lo-fi sort of experience. I weirdly prefer to play it in standard definition, and I thought it looked great on the monitor. Certain games do add borders around the screen and 4x3, so I did just change the settings of my console back to 16:9. You can tell the image has been stretched out, but I thought Kirby's Epic Yarn still looked quite good. Same as Donkey Kong Country Returns. The 16:9 image is being squished into 4x3, but I thought it still looked quite striking. Sorry, I'm sure this incorrect display aspect ratio is surely infuriating someone right now. This is the Wii edition of House of the Dead 2 here. Just to clarify that no, I'm afraid your light guns aren't going to work on this TV. I did also load up several of my GameCube games via the Wii, and again I was more than happy with the results. For a 2002 release, Star Fox Adventures actually looks kind of amazing. There were a couple of GameCube games where I had to force them to load in progressive scan. I booted them up in the Nintendo app via Homebrew, but again I'm pretty satisfied with how these look. When was the last Rayman game actually? I kinda missed this series. Unsurprisingly, I did also have some pretty good results with the PS2 component cables. Again, I'm just using regular old cheap component cables I found. I thought Jak and Daxter looked pretty fantastic, no complaints here. As does the original PS2 edition of Okami. Yes, you probably are better off with one of those HD remasters of Okami, but the game's visuals were very stylized and even the original edition still looks great to me. There's even an option for an LCD display in the system menu. It's actually pretty nostalgic seeing a bunch of PlayStation 2 games on an LCD screen. I'm pretty sure this is how I experienced some of these games on an old LCD TV from my student days. I even had one of those portable screen add-ons for the system at some point, although it stopped working a long time ago. How about connecting the PlayStation 3 to the monitor via component? Again, it's a kind of weirdly nostalgic look for me. This is how me and a friend played the original Resistance back at the system launch in 2007, I think it was. I couldn't afford to buy an expensive new PlayStation console and a new HD TV. Same as the original Uncharted, I weirdly kind of like how this looks. Okay, I don't think I'd actually want to play it this way, but there's something very early 2000s about that colour palette and those water effects. I am in the middle of a replay of the original Infamous from 2009. This is one of my favourite games on the console, and it looks strangely fitting in standard definition. Or is it just me? Ratchet & Clank: The Tools of Destruction really nailed that Pixar movie look. And seeing it again on this old monitor here, it really feels like I'm watching a DVD of Toy Story 2 or something. This opening level looked really mind-blowing when I first played it back in 2008. I did really want to try the Xbox 360 and just be reminded of how almost unreadable that text is in Dead Rising when you played it on standard definition. But alas, my console read Rings of Death a long time ago. So here is the original Microsoft Xbox via an RGB cable, and honestly it looks kinda spectacular. My system is a PAL format console which a friend of mine tinkered with, removing the region lock for example. I may have to do another playthrough of Time Splitters on this thing. I think in general the monitor does a pretty good job with a lot of the 6th console generation. For the absolute life of me, I could not get the Dreamcast VGA to work, so again I had to resort to using another specialist RGB cable. My console is the PAL European edition, and yes, it can display in 60Hz on this thing. It's not a bad look overall, but I don't think this really captures the look of the Dreamcast for me, especially after you've seen Dreamcast running in VGA on a fancy monitor. I did seem to run into the occasional problem whenever I was trying to force my console to load up some of my import games. So that's a no-go for Gunbird, Hydro Thunder and Skies of Arcadia. Not bad overall, but I think I've seen way better for the Dreamcast. I did have some pretty decent results with the Sega Mega Drive Mega CD combo and an RGB cable again. I did notice there was a little bit of a bluish tint. I think that's more down to the iffy cables I'm using, or maybe just the camera on my phone even. So yeah, I think this does look pretty good, you're just gonna have to take my word for it. This actually reminds me of the time a friend of mine set up the Mega Drive to his PC or Amiga monitor, or something very similar. SCART cables were a lot more prevalent over here in Europe, maybe it was just SCART to VGA? Either way, I do kind of like this look for the Mega Drive. Just look at that beautiful grainy full motion video. For the Super Nintendo, I have an RGB modded Super Nintendo Junior console. I do kind of like this look, but I think for the 16-bit consoles it's really down to your own personal preferences. Personally, I thought Yoshi's Island looked pretty great on this thing. Oh, and I really had to pull myself away from playing Mega Man X again, and Mega Man 7 actually. It did make me realise I can't say I've really noticed any problems with button lag at least. I thought I'd also try out the Super Game Boy here. The border art in particular looked especially good, but you might notice the shimmering effect on the pixel art here. Again, I think this is really going to be down to your own personal taste. I still prefer the Super Nintendo on a decent CRT, but this isn't too bad of a look overall for me. How about a quick visit to the 32-bit generation? I have the Sega Saturn connected via an RGB cable again, and I thought the Saturn edition of Rayman looked pretty spectacular on this thing. I also thought Knights and Sega Rally also looked quite good. Unfortunately for the PlayStation 1, all I had was just AV cables, so it looks about as good as you can expect. Perhaps not the best look for the PlayStation 1, maybe I can revisit the console again some other time. My Nintendo 64 is RGB modded, but I think I need to resolder the pins inside my console, as it's currently decided it doesn't want to output in RGB anymore. So again, I had to make do with regular old AV cables. And I don't hate this look as much as I thought I would. I played around with the actual TV settings to adjust some of the colours, and the N64 has always had that much blurrier, softer image, which I weirdly kind of like. It's certainly not a look for everyone, and GoldenEye was looking horrendously blurry. Perhaps I can fix up my console and try again in future, but I didn't think it looked too bad personally. And finally we have the Famicom AV with AV cables again. I don't think this really captures the look of 8-bit Nintendo for me, but I think I've seen much worse. So yeah, there you have it. I don't want to make this video too long, but I just thought it might be interesting to show you a bunch of games running on the monitor, since I got a few folks asking about it. I know that isn't every console covered, but I hope that gives you an idea of what to expect if you do want to try hunting for one of these yourself. This monitor was a very cheap purchase, which I bought for as little as £5 from their local charity, so no complaints from me. I think personally the best results were from the Wii, PS2, GameCube and Xbox, whereas anything older than that was just a little bit hit and miss. But yeah, I hope you found this an interesting watch. Let me know what you think in the comments, perhaps I could try something similar in future. If you've made it this far into the video, thanks ever so much for watching, and I hope I catch you next time. Take care.